In this unit, Unit 9 of 504, I want to discuss with you reforming budget making. And one of the issues, obviously, is that the budget is a very, very large part of what governments do, especially the federal government, but also provincial government. And so the unit is designed so that it gives you a sense of what the big issues are. It focuses primarily on the federal level budget, but it's not exclusive of understanding how it's done elsewhere. It's not such a bad unit for people who really don't like, number issues, because it's really a unit where you do a lot of reading on how budget works and what budgets are. One of the things that I like to say is that we basically learn the core issues about budget, who are the core partners around budgets. We also discuss the challenges, and we also learn to maybe be more critical, step back and be a bit more critical about whole issues about budgetary reform, right? Because it seems that for the last 30 or 40 years, we have gone through crisis and budgetary reform almost every time we have new governments. And so that's kind of a little bit the critical aspect here. And one of the things that I like to say about this is that budgets are exactly like policies. They are about politics. And nobody should assume that, because we're talking about numbers, we're not talking about politics. Budgets are about politics. Budgets also, because they are about numbers, allow us to think through success or errors, something governments do not like to engage with, errors. And they are instruments of government activities. So it's kind of an interesting area because, in many different governments, when you control the budget, when you're a minister in charge of the money, basically, you can become extremely influential. And there are often tensions between the ministers in charge of the budget and all the other ministers, sometimes even prime ministers. So there are a number of articles in the unit that I think are quite interesting in this regard. The first one, the Graham article, basically looks at big picture items and describe in a way the scenery, so you understand, you discover, if you know nothing about budget, you basically get your 101 budget with this article. And he also has a historical approach. So in other words, you see the evolution and you see the discussions between people who collect the money and people who spend the money, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going in the jargon here, but you'll see that there are all kind of different ways to analyze this. And then you have an article by Good, who has published, I think, a couple of books on this. And he looks also at big picture item, but he really focuses on, budget totals, allocation towards policies, so this kind of transformation. We have so much money, how do we distribute the money across the different policy areas? And then also issues of efficiencies. Primarily efficiencies, much less effectiveness. But looking at the question as to whether somebody who does budget analysis or somebody who does look at budget would be able to determine the efficiency of the policy. So is that a nice way to approach this? And then you have an article by Schicks, who looks at budget reforms. And as I was saying just a few minutes ago, the whole idea is, are budget reforms in reality reforms? Or are they basically a way of thinking about budget that really is just about politics, the politics of money, and how we distribute money, and what we do with money? Certain governments, for instance, systematically borrow more than other governments. Other governments tend to try to have really balanced allocations of funds across different policies. And these are basically all decisions about politics. So I think the article is quite interesting in this regard because it really gives you a sense of, these big questions. And I think it's a really interesting unit, especially for people who don't like money issues, because it really opens your mind as to the power behind allocating funding to different ministries and different policies, whether it's at the federal or provincial level, but also across, territorial and local governments themselves. Obviously, it brings you to think through these different issues. So do the reading, and I'll meet you on the course space to discuss this further. Thank you very much.